first of all, can I say how delighted I am to see Helen again? It's, I suppose, actually, it must have been, what was it, 9 years you were just saying that I first met Helen when she was setting up the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library here. And I thought, what a wonderful idea, having been a teacher and taught children who obviously came from homes where books were not normal to have in the house. You know, bookshelves, well, they were shelves, but they weren't bookshelves. Noticing how, you know, I was teaching at secondary, how they struggled quite often to get to grips with what do you do with a book, you know, and I'm teaching a subject where a lot of it requires you to read a book, or it did then. And so the Imagination Library struck me as being absolutely wonderful. And I don't know quite what Helen's circumstances were at the time, but I got the impression that it was mum, you know, starting out doing something for her children and for other children in the area as well. But from the small beginning, I can see that it actually led to all sorts of career possibilities. And she's now a regional director for the Dollywood Foundation in England and Wales. And I'm going to shut up there and hand over to her because everybody's waiting to hear what you've got to say, Helen. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Sue. And, you know, I hope you'll be fascinated with some of the latest research that we've got that proves, and we keep having to prove, that putting books in the hands of children is a good thing and is worthwhile as doing. So I'm going to share my screen and share some slides with you, and I'll aim to talk for about 30-35 minutes, and then if you've got any questions, I'll be delighted to answer them. Now, I hope you can all see my screen there and my slides. So I'll start off by just talking about what the Dollywood Foundation is and what we do, and then I'll talk about, you know, why I started it in Lambourn and how I ended up working for the foundation, and then some of the research as to why it's a good thing, and then a little bit about how we choose the books and the process that goes into that. Okay, so the Dollywood Foundation is Dolly's charity, and our parent charity, the Dollywood Foundation USA, is over in Tennessee, and that's been going for about 30 years. And the Dollywood Foundation delivers the program Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. In the United States, the Dollywood Foundation does all sorts of other things too, such as scholarships for older children and all sorts of other book gifting type activities. But in the UK, there's just 3 of us that work full time for the foundation. There's myself looking after England and Wales. I've got a colleague, Meg, who looks after Scotland and Northern Ireland and helps me out with England, the northern bits. And then we have an executive director who looks after the Republic of Ireland, plus all things United Kingdom. So all our administration and our operations team are in Tennessee. And they also cover Canada, the Republic of Ireland, like I said, and Australia. So we're in five countries, and we've been in the United Kingdom for about 14 years now. So what Dolly Parton's Imagination Library is a book gifting scheme, and children can be registered at any point from birth until the month they turn 5. So if you're registered at birth, a child can get 60 books before they turn 5, and they're all carefully chosen. And the idea is that each year of birth from 0 to 5 gets a different book. So we're mailing 6 different books every month so that all the children are getting something age appropriate. They're delivered directly to the child at home. They come with the child's name on the label, so it's very much their gift. And they arrive through the post every month. And when I talk about the research, the evidence suggests that it's that dosage, that frequency of reminding parents every month and getting a new resource into the house that's the key to the success of the programme. As I said, it's available for children from birth until 5. And the way it works is that we, the Dollywood Foundation, partner with local community partners, and that could be another charity, it could be a local authority, could be a school or a nursery or just a community group. And together we formed Dolly Parton's Imagination Library in the area to put books into the hands of children. So we, the Dollywood Foundation, are responsible for all the organisation and the administration of the system. And we provide a secure book order system, and we provide the book selection committee, and also the contract with Penguin Random House. All our books come from them. So the Dollywood Foundation is the bit that Dolly funds, and Dolly funds it from a percentage share of her profits from the bits of the businesses she owns. Now, you know, everybody knows about her songwriting and her singing and performing, but it's also, they have these things in Tennessee called dinner shows, and they all have a Dolly theme, and it's singing and dancing, and Cirque du Soleil does all sorts of acrobatics and stuff. But the way the theatre's laid out is that they have little tables in front, a bit like a sort of a lecture theatre where you have something to write on, but instead this is something to eat on, and you're given food as you watch the show. So you get a sort of a set menu brought to your seat by the waitress as you eat, and it's called a dinner show, and people pay huge amounts of money for this, which we just find bizarre as a concept, because these things are specially built. They're not like regular theatres. So she makes a lot of money from the dinner shows. And she also has her own theme park in Tennessee called Dollywood. And it's got a Dolly museum, and it's got her tour bus that you can go in. It's got her wig collection. So if you're a Dolly fan, and I have to admit, I wasn't particularly a Dolly fan, I just like books, but even I found it fascinating to go and look at someone's wig cabinet and see thousands of wigs. It really is the most bizarre place to go and visit. And the rest of it, there's roller coasters, and next door there's a water park. Anyway, all that makes lots and lots of money, and it's the profit share from that belongs to Dolly that she gives a percentage to fund the foundation. So we're very lucky. Unlike lots of other charities, I don't have to fundraise to fund my own job and my own position and the organisation, because so many people that work for charities, they have a fundraising team whose job it is to raise money to keep the charity going. So we're very lucky. We don't have to do any of that. Any money that's donated to us goes directly on books for children. So that's what we, the foundation, do. And then the community partner is responsible for registering the children in their community that they want to get the books and paying for the books. And the books cost on average £1 each. Because we buy about 47,000 a month from Penguin Random House, that's about £500,000 a year. They sell us them at a very, very cheap cost, an average £1. And actually the fulfillment, the labelling, the wrapping in the paper and the delivery to the child costs more than the book. That costs about £1.8p each. So that's what the community partner is responsible for. And as I say, we have all sorts all over the UK doing this. So just to give you an idea of the scale, in England, we've got around 142 programmes covering around 40,000 children. Up in Scotland, we've got 67 different community partners covering just over 3,000. In Northern Ireland, we're quite new in Northern Ireland, but I'm delighted that we've got 12 programmes. The first one was a mixed faith community school, and it's grown from there, and it's now delivered through children's centres, and it's funded by Hagen Homes, which is a house builder. Love the idea of the programme, so they fund it in Northern Ireland. And in Wales, we've got 4 programmes with 120 children, but we do have lots of interest from Wales. So that's sort of the scale of what we do. In England, our biggest programme is the London Borough of Southwark, where we've got 10,000 children registered, all receiving the books, which is virtually all children under 5 in Southwark. Up in North Lincolnshire, we've got around 7,000 children there. And then the programmes just sort of decrease in scale. And then we do some employee loyalty programmes where employers offer the programme to their staff with children as a benefit. And our smallest programme is a company that manufactures valves of some sort in Birmingham that has 4 children registered, but it's still really lovely that they are part of the programme and see this as value. And one of the things that I'm most delighted that we've managed to put together is we offer a programme for children in care in England. So we'll look after children aged under 5 in England, can sign up for the Imagination Library through local authorities. And that's funded by a charity called Make My Day Better, And so we've got around 4,000 children in care in England receiving the books. And in Scotland, that's funded by the Scottish Government. And we've got around 3,000 children in care receiving the books there. And I think that's such an important aspect of what we do alongside our universal programmes. So you might be wondering why Dolly did this. And this is one of her favourite sayings, you can never get enough books into the hands of enough children. Well, the reason why she started this was because she grew up in a shack with, I think, 11 brothers and sisters, and her father was illiterate. She said he was incredibly hardworking, but the thing that kept him in really low paid jobs was the fact that he couldn't read and write. The only book in the house was the Bible. Dolly went off to school, saw the benefit of education, and became the superstar she is today. But she never forgot that experience of her father being unable to read and the impact that had on his life and his ability to progress in life. So when she had the opportunity to start a charity, that was what she went for, gifting books to children. And she was advised that the biggest impact you can have is the early years. So that's what she did. So that's why she started the Imagination Library. It started in Tennessee about nearly 30 years ago. And she just thought she'd do it for the state of Tennessee. But other neighbouring states wanted the programme, so it gradually spread across the United States. It spread to Canada. And then in 2007, it launched in the United Kingdom up in Rotherham, and has spread very gently and gradually since then in the UK. And 3 years ago, we started in the Republic of Ireland because somebody who had family in the UK, their child got the books and they said, you know, hey, this is wonderful. So again, it was almost that word of mouth progress that led to a charity in the Republic of Ireland wanting to start the programme. And I'll also just say at this point sort of why I'm involved. I live in Lambourn. I've been here, I think, 21 years. And when I was pregnant with George, with Eric, my first little boy, he's 12 now, I heard about the Imagination Library programme and thought this would be a fabulous thing to start in Lambourn for my boys, but also for the boys, the other children in the community. And I must admit, I was quite naive as a first-time mum. I thought everyone read to their kids because I was read to as a child, and I realised that wasn't the case. So I quickly realised that this went from something fun that I thought I could do for my children and their friends into a much larger thing that would be good for the community. So as a volunteer, I became an affiliate partner, and I know lots of you on the call here have probably heard me speak before, and I recognise you from around the village, and many of you have offered support for the Imagination Library, for which I'm really grateful. And Lambourn Library has played a central role in that. We held events there when my children were smaller, and also, you know, promoted the Imagination Library and given out registration forms and things, which is just marvellous. So I did fundraising in the village, and we very quickly went up to about 250 children, and that was great. And West Berkshire, the council, started an Imagination Library a few years ago, funded by Greenham Trust. And when COVID hit, a lot of community-based fundraising activities were just cancelled, and my funding got incredibly low. And West Berkshire Council very kindly agreed that we could amalgamate the programmes, and I would continue to do some fundraising for Lambourn, but the Lambourn children would be amalgamated into the West Berkshire Imagination Library. So they're still getting the books, they can still register, the school's still involved and so forth, but it's just administered slightly differently. So that's kind of my journey and why I'm involved. And I worked as a project manager in London, and I had a career break when my second little boy, George, was just starting school. And I really didn't want to go back to my job, lots of travelling and so forth. And I saw a job advertised with the Dollywood Foundation to be essentially a programme manager for the Imagination Library and look after England and Wales. And it was just one of those things where I thought, oh my goodness, that's my hobby. I run an Imagination Library and they want a project manager. That's what I do for a living. So it was just absolute luck of being in the right place at the right time. When I was supposed to go back to my other job, I resigned and was very lucky to get a job with the Dollywood Foundation. And that was in 2016. And I've been with them ever since. And and it is tremendous fun, but it's also quite hard work trying to persuade people to fund us and to get affiliate partners and communities to run programs. But anyway, that's my tale. I thought you'd like to know the Lambourn connection and why I'm involved, and what we do. So moving on, I guess I just want to make the point that the importance of book ownership and reading is not new. The evidence suggests that this is the key to education, and it has been for years. So we've got a quote there from 1985. The single most significant factor influencing a child's early educational success is an introduction to books and being read to at home prior to beginning school. 1993, children who have not already developed some basic literacy practices when they enter school are 3 to 4 times more likely to drop out in later years. And 2000, most of the reading problems faced by today's adolescents and adults are the result of problems that might have been avoided or resolved in their early childhood years. 2002, owning as few as 20 books equals a higher level of education. And in 2011, 1 in 3 children do not own a book. 80% of young people who read at or above the expected level for their age had books of their own. So we know that books are key, and we've known that for a long time. So this is what Stephen Marwick, the Director of Evaluation Support Scotland, that does evaluations for the Scottish Government, said. If we already know that having access to books has an impact on children's interest in reading and literacy development, we shouldn't have to keep evidencing that over and over again. But we do, because people like up-to-date evidence. They like stuff, funders like stuff that's been produced in the last year or 18 months to 2 years. And we keep having to generate new evidence to prove that books is the key to so many things. And, you know, a bit like Friends of Lambourn Libraries' own battle to save the library and to keep it going, you know, you can't stand still. You understand that it's always a process to keep things moving forward and keep providing services. So we were delighted when Swansea University Professor Janet Goodall came forward and said, look, we love what you do. I've got a PhD candidate who wants to do a PhD on the Imagination Library. Would you be interested? And we were like, oh, yeah, absolutely. That's fabulous. So Caroline is approaching the end of her PhD. It's due to be published in March 2022. She spent 3 years researching the impact of the Imagination Library books. And she has focused in particular on the parental engagement aspect and what's come up. And she surveyed about 15,000 parents to get their views on the Imagination Library. And she was particularly interested in how their behaviours have changed and the impact the books have had on their families. So these are her sort of headline figures. She says that for 92%, people agreed that we share the books with older and younger siblings in our family. So the impact isn't just the children who get the books, it's the whole family. 93% say I enjoy reading with my child more. 97%, the books have helped develop my child's speech and language. 98% say my child looks forward to the books arriving. And if you think, we don't get much post now anyway, but imagine a book arriving every month if you were a child. It is so exciting. And you rip open that envelope and it's a present just for you. It is quite a lovely thing. 88% say we read more often, and 99% say my child is enthusiastic to share books with me. So this is just amazing. This is fabulous. This is proper peer-reviewed PhD research, you know, saying that, yes, this is a benefit and we love it. And then if we just look at a piece of research that was published on the 11th of April, 2021, and this was entitled Evaluating the Impact of Book Gifting on the Reading Behaviours of Parents on Young Children. And this was by a team from Nottingham Trent University. And they did a different thing. They didn't interview parents in the way that Caroline did. They compared a group of parents who were receiving the Imagination Library books and their behaviours with a group of parents who weren't receiving the books. And what they discovered was the families receiving the Imagination Library books had more interactions while reading. So they talked about the books and talked about the pictures and the colours and the letters and all the rest of it. And they had longer reading sessions. They read to their children on a daily basis. And the researchers thought that it would considerably enhance disadvantaged children's future academic success by having these regular, longer and deeper quality reading sessions. So we thought that was a fabulous piece of research as well. It's current, it's up to date, and because it was comparing children who did get the books with children who didn't, it gave a very clear sense of what the impact was compared to the control group. And whereas there are other book gifting programs around, what it did go on to say was the benefit of the Imagination Library, again, is that frequency of the books. They come every month, they're age appropriate, so they lead the parent on through the reading journey. And the parent and the child is exposed to many different kinds of reading. And I'll come on to how we choose the books and what we put in just a little bit. So I'm afraid this is quite a busy slide, but what I'm trying to do is just demonstrate how the data and how the impact of the Imagination Library stays with the child. So the orange column is the home learning environment, and this is based on what parents tell us. So generally speaking, 95% of families read every day since receiving the books, and I'm sure you'll like this one. 43% of families have started using public libraries more, and this data is based on parent surveys that we do across our sites. And 96% agree the programme has encouraged their child to enjoy reading and develop a love of books. So that fits with what Caroline found in her PhD. So that's literally asking parents, what do you think? However, the EYFS column in the middle is the early years foundation stage. And this is based on teacher assessment when a child reaches the end of reception. So this isn't what the parent thinks. This is the teacher's assessment view of a child. And there's this thing called good level of development, where children are assessed at the end of their reception year. And this data comes from North Lincolnshire Council, as because they've got a very high proportion of children receiving the Imagination Library books. And also, crucially, they've got permission from the parents to track who's getting the Imagination Library books with how they perform at school. So there was a 22% increase in children achieving a good level of development across North Lincolnshire between 2013 and 2018, which is a huge step up. And 70% of boys achieved a good level of development compared to 56% of boys not receiving books. So this was fascinating, that the Imagination Library books were having such a huge impact on boys. So we asked them to dig into this a little bit and find out why. And they discovered that anecdotally, in that area, North Lincolnshire, a lot of parents felt that you didn't read with little boys, you read with little girls. Little boys should be out building or constructing or playing. And it was just trying to set the culture that actually it is okay to read to little boys and you should read to little boys. And this is the impact it has. And so they've really had to work hard to turn around those perceptions. And because the books are going there every month, as I've said, it's had a massive impact on boys, and they start school the same level as the girls because of the books in the home. And then in year one, there's this thing called the Phonics screening test, where children are expected to read 40 words, and 20 of them are real and 20 of them aren't, but it's about how they've taken in literacy, language, and communication and so forth. And 84% of children met the expected standard who received the books, compared to 76% who were not registered. So again, the uplift and the impact of the Imagination Library had stayed with those children. And we understand that the Key Stage 1 results for this cohort of children show the same uplift too. And as Sue was alluding to in the introduction, if your child can't read, then they can't read the questions at school, they can't interact properly. And so the uplift was across maths, English, and all the other subjects, because the child, could read the questions and so forth. So there you go. So that's the evidence as to why the Imagination Library and book gifting is a good thing. So I'd just like to move on to talk about books we gift and why we do it. So this is our book selection committee. We've got Colin Brabazon there, who is a children's librarian. And then we've got Ailsa, who is a practitioner. She designs sessions and runs sessions and works in the early years. And then we've got Karen, who works with Scottish Book Trust and runs their early years programme. So we've got other folk in the book selection panel as well. But basically, they're all people who work in and around the early years or libraries and have a vast knowledge of children's books. So over on the other side of the slide, you can see all the books laid out on the table. And that's the amazing bit of the book selection panel, is when they've picked their 60 books for the year and we lay them all out and they just look beautiful. They're so colourful. It's always quite a proud moment when we've selected them. So as I said, all our books come from Penguin Random House. They give us access to their current and back catalogue. So we have over 30,000 titles to choose from. And what Sam, who's our operations director, does is he works with our team at Penguin, and they put together a short list. I say short, it's about 200 books of things they think we might be interested in, because they know from previous years what the book selection committee are after. And then the book selection committee comes together for 3 days. They read all those books, and then we slot in what can be replaced. So in order to keep costs down, we keep books in typically for 2 years, and we rotate them, or we move them out on a rotating basis. So every year, between 40 and 60% of the books will be new. So it totally refreshes every 2 years. I should say the welcome book is the Tailor Peter Rabbit, and it's got a special foreword from Dolly, and that's a special edition made for us by Penguin Random House. And then the month a child turns 5, they get the graduation book, which is Just Imagine by Nick Sharratt and Pippa Goodhart. And again, it's a really great book. So what we try and do within each group, and I'll just move on to this slide. This is our group 6 books for 2021. So this is children who were born in 2016. So they're turning 5. But it's indicative of what we try and put into all our groups. Is we try and get a fact-based book in there. We try and get something that's from the back catalogue, from an author that people perhaps won't know. You might be familiar with Alan Alberg or John Birningham, and some of those other sort of fantastic authors. Shirley, I've forgotten her name. Anyway, so we try and bring authors, really classic books.
Shirley Hughes, you mean? Do you mean Hughes?
Thank you. Dearie me, I'll get told off. Shirley Hughes, thank you. Yes, we had an Alfie book in last year, which was lovely. And the style of illustrations are slightly different from modern illustrations, and it just opens up different things for the children. So what we're trying to do within each year group is really provide a contrast of books, themes, and styles. So if I just talk through what we're trying to do here with the group 6 books, you'll see what I mean. So you'll see Baby on board there from Alan Alberg, and that's been published around 30 years. So that was a gem from the back catalogue. We've got The Last Wolf, which is by Minnie Gray, and that's got an ecological theme. It's about the wolf's habitat being destroyed. So that's the sort of book that will go on and stay with the child beyond their 5th birthday, and they'll hopefully enjoy. We're also really aware that of the 47,000 children we mail books to, they're all from a very diverse background. We've got a Gypsy and Traveller community in Salford who get our books, for example, and in the London borough of Southwark, 60% of the children are not white, they're from different ethnic backgrounds. And there's also around 90 different languages spoken there, which is a phenomenal challenge. So, we try and make sure some of the books are ethnically diverse. So you see we've got Look Up there, which is about space. And then we've got our fact-based book, Birds and Insects. And then we've just got really good, fun, silly books like Choose Llamas, which has a cracking rhyme. So introducing children to rhyme is really important. And then we've got Otto the Book Bear in the Snow, which is a beautiful book for December, and is a very traditional sort of story, which is just lovely and has beautiful illustrations of the little bears, and they end up back in their library nice and safe, which is a lovely tale. And then we've got Pablo's Feelings there in the centre, which is about a neurodiverse boy who has autism and his interactions with the world. Now, what the book selection committee are absolutely adamant is they wouldn't put a book in just because it ticked a box, just because it was diverse or because it represented disability, for example. All the books we pick have to be absolutely cracking. They have to be the best of what's available. And they're also aware that sometimes the parents getting our books might have very weak literacy skills themselves, or they might have English as an additional language. So what's important there is that the books have really strong illustrations. So even if you can't read all the words, you can still make a sensible pathway through and enjoy sharing and talking about the book with your child. And with our group 6 books, as it's our oldest age group, it's really important that these books kind of lead on and stay with the child. And it's the repetition of reading the books, but also with these books, it's the fact that they can be enjoyed up till a child is sort of 7, 8 or 9 as well. And that's really important. And for the babies that get our books, very much in the noughts and the ones, it's board books for little fingers. So we do take great care with that. So that was all my slides really. And if I stop sharing my screen, I can just show you what I mean about some of the books. So things like Scott Bakes Cake, you know, is a board book, so that would be for an 18-month-old. And what Penguin do, which is great, you'll see this has got our logo on, is Penguin resize books and reduce the thickness of the card, for example. So if you bought a commercial copy of Spot Bakes a Cake, the front cover would be about twice that thickness. So they reduce the thickness of the covers for us, which means that the book costs less in terms of paper, but also costs less in postage. And that means it comes in our £2.08 price bracket. So here's The Tale of Peter Rabbit. This is our welcome book, and it's a special edition by Dolly. It's got her signature in it and a little poem and a bit explaining to the parents what the programme is. Now, Penguin sell us these at 75p each because we buy so many of them. So that's why we're able to do the programme for £2.08 on average per child, which works out no more than £25 per child per year. And then here's Just Imagine, our graduation book. Now, this one's a bit of a challenge. We've reduced the size compared to the commercial book, but it's still sometimes a problem going through letterboxes. So next time we have this one reprinted, we're going to see if we can agree with the designer and the publishers, the author and the illustrator, to get it just a bit smaller so that it is posted more easily. And I also wanted to show you what the books look like. They're wrapped in paper, and they've got the child's name on, they've got a gift from Dolly, and they've got who the funder is, who actually is paying for the books, who is our community partner. So again, the paper's recyclable, so it works really, really well. There we go. So that's all I've got to say. So would anybody like to ask me any questions?
So do they have to be, can anybody get the book, any children get the books, or does it have to have like a partner? Because I've got a friend that's just had a baby, she's 4 months old, and I was just wondering about her, but I don't know, she's not local.
No, so we work with a community partner, and it's their responsibility to register the children in their area and pay for the books for the children that they register. And so, you know, we guarantee that the books for a year won't cost more than £25 per child. So I'd recommend she goes to our website, imaginationlibrary.com, and there's a Find My Programme function, and you can search if there is one in our area. There are quite a few locally.
Okay, have a look.
And you know, West Berkshire, if she's in West Berkshire, it is fairly universal, the coverage, so she might be lucky. And you never know, we also get lots of new parents who start programmes for their friends, for their community, and so forth. So you never know. Any other questions?
I was going to ask about literacy rates in Lambourn. My wife is involved with the school, and she talks about literacy among the parents. I mean, there are quite a lot of backgrounds and things here, Indian people and so on, you know, who may not be able to read. And have you personally been involved with this kind of thing, you know, here in our local community?
No, not at all, really. I mean, in terms of the actual books themselves, the book selection committee try and make them as accessible as possible to parents who do have poor literacy skills by making sure the illustrations are really strong. But I guess we can only crack one nut, and we focus on, you know, the child's literacy. That's our focus, really. So I couldn't really comment on that in Lambourn, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Can I ask a question? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sure Dolly's immortal. I mean, this woman is incredible, but is there a plan? Will this program outlive her? Is there a kind of, is it future proofed?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think about 5 years ago, the foundation started to panic, and David Dotson, who was the president at the time, felt that we needed a legacy plan and it needed to be locked in. What is Dolly's legacy? Will the Imagination Library go with her? What's the plan? And as I understand it, the trustees of the foundation over in the US have put together a legacy plan, and part of Dolly's estate will continue to fund the foundation. And that's all sort of been tied down in the last few years. But they haven't really made much of a fuss about it because nobody wants to kind of
Think about
publicise
it.
that, you know, or state, but it is there and it is now locked in.
No, because it sounds amazing, and I'm sure she would want it to continue for as long as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because she is chair of the board and things, and she does help out by giving us signed books, which a lot of our affiliate community partners raffle, and lots of signed Dolly photos and things. But in terms of the day-to-day involvement, you know, she doesn't have that, but she has a general overview. And when new programs start, she's always delighted. And sometimes she picks on an area or something that she's told resonates. So, for example, a program in Hull launched in June 2020, just as the pandemic was really kicking in. Now, she had somebody that works for her that was from Hull. And so she appeared on Northeast, the Humberside and Northeast Regional BBC News, and did a special 5-minute interview with them, saying how delighted she was that her Imagination Library had come to Hull. So, you know, every now and again, she pops up and says, hey, I want to do this. And we just try and make it happen. And it really is quite unexpected, but it was this connection with Hull. And she'd been briefed that a program was starting in Hull, and she just dived in there. And the fundraising impact of that was massive, as I'm sure you can imagine. People love seeing Dolly on the news, talking about Hull, you know, yeah, so it is quite interesting. And at other times, we desperately try to get stuff out of her, and she's not interested, you know, if there isn't that personal connection or that link. So yeah, it swings and roundabouts, but she is briefed sort of every few months on what's going on.
Can I ask about your career now? You're based in Lambourn. You know, you can work from home. Do you have to travel a lot? You know, either around the country or to America, or what? How does it work?
Yeah, so I did. So that's one of the things that appealed to me about working for the foundation, in that it was home based. So I've worked from home since 2016. You see, I've got my cutout Dolly behind me, which is life size. So you know, that's been fairly standard. Now, pre-pandemic, I probably spent 2 or 3 days out and about around England, mainly the odd day in Wales, talking to partners, giving presentations, chatting to folk, doing fundraisers and stuff. But since the pandemic hit, I've been to North Lincolnshire once. You know, people aren't interested, even with the sort of the easing in the last few months and so forth. People have adapted to Zoom and Microsoft Teams and everything else, and I've hardly been anywhere, which is quite sad really, because I did enjoy the travel and the meeting people and that connection, you know, and so it has been different, but we have got more work done and we have continued to grow. And in terms of going to the United States, we used to go twice a year to meet our colleagues and exchange ideas and be briefed and so forth. And we'd also do a bit of international promotion for the foundation, speaking to international journalists. My most surreal evening was going to a pumpkin festival with a journalist from the Daily Mail. And after about 20 minutes, we were just like, this is just crazy. It was torrential rain, and we were looking at a pumpkin display that just went on for miles. And so we retreated to the bar and had a chat about the programme there. So you know, we used to go twice a year for a week at a time and do stuff like that, and also chat with colleagues. But sadly, that's all on Zoom now as well. So who knows when, if we'll go again. I don't know. But it's a shame because my newer colleagues haven't met Dolly because they've not been over to Dollywood and they've not had that opportunity. And of course, it's one of the first things people ask us, you know, have you met Dolly? And I do feel quite sad for them, because if they haven't, you know, there's that sort of element missing from the fact that we represent her, and so on.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
Can I ask another question about your book selection? Is it true, I've heard this, but I can't remember where I've heard it, that it's been proven that girls will read books with male characters, but boys won't read books with female characters, and what can be done about it? And if it comes up in...
It's fascinating, that. And as a committee, they've taken the view, and particularly if you think about that research that came out of North Lincolnshire about parents' reluctance to read to boys, and this perception that there's books for boys and there's books for girls, whereas we take the view there's books for children. We are slightly mindful of not picking books that might put off parents of boys and boys themselves because of their upbringing and so forth. So, for example, we wouldn't pick a book with a pink unicorn and sparkles on the front, because we don't want it to be seen, and we don't want anyone to say, oh, that's a girl's book, because that's not what we're about. So that's not written down, that's not official, but we're just very aware that we wouldn't want ever to put anybody off. And you're quite right, we do parent surveys every 2 years, and we've never had a parent saying this book wasn't right for my little girl, but we have had parents of boys saying this was a girl book. So we are very mindful of that. And the other thing on that that's quite interesting is animal characters versus human characters. And we do try and make sure we have humans in our books, or drawings of humans, and both male and female lead protagonists. And one of my tasks at the end of each book selection is to go through all the books and count how many are male, how many are female, how many are animal, how many are human, lead characters and all the rest of it, just to make sure we've got a balance. And within each group, the children will actually see a human male, a human female child, you know, and so forth, just so they're getting that balance and mix. But it is fascinating, and there isn't much research on that perception that you mentioned. So I would be fascinated to read more about that, definitely. Anything else?
Anyone got any more? Right.
Well, I have a question. I didn't entirely understand how it is that parents get involved with this, and I'm wondering here in Lambourn if there's anything, you know, would you like the Friends of the Library, for example, to get involved in this programme?
Well, I've got to be a bit careful because I'm not the one that registers the children in Lambourn anymore. It's West Berkshire Council, and they do promote it on their early years Facebook groups, and they also use the health visitors to promote the programme.
Okay.
To make sure children and babies sign up. But I do believe there are still some registration forms in the library, paper forms, which would signpost parents to sign up as well. And I do get the odd referral from the library staff, and I send the parents on to where to register and so on. And the school, I understand, are going to do more. I think there's a newish head to do more to make sure it's promoted to the families, particularly in nursery and at the lower end, to try and capture those 2-year-olds and make sure they are signed up so they get the maximum benefit from the programme.
That's very interesting. So if anyone in the community talks to the Friends of the Library, we should simply, you know, refer them to this established route through the school and West Berkshire and all that, and the children would get registered. Is that right?
I mean, the simplest thing to do is to go to the website imaginationlibrary.com, and then there's a big sort of check availability tab on there. And if you put in your postcode, if you live in West Berkshire, it should come up that you can register, and you can either register online, or it gives you the contact details for the lead early years workers in West Berks who will register your child. So that's the best way to signpost.
And the program is very much of children from age 0 to age 5, and not for older children. So if children are at school and they're having trouble with reading or something, they wouldn't be eligible for this program. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's very much an early years program, preparation for school, developing emergent literacy skills. So, you know, we're very much focused on birth to the age of 5.
Yeah, that's fine.
I was just going to ask a follow-up. Now that we're putting the library back to rights, because everything got cleared with COVID and that. If we are thinking in terms of the forms that we have had, which was very much your name all over them, as I recall, if we go on the Imagination Library link, we can find the details for West Berkshire and things, so that we're actually pointing them in the right direction. I was rather conscious that as I say, it's got your name all over the form.
Yeah, and you know, I do get contacted by folk, and I do signpost them on and make sure they're signed up and so forth. But yes, well, perhaps once you're ready, if you let me know, I can introduce you to the team at the council, right, and make sure that they send you the relevant information and so forth, because it's just sort of moved departments, and it's becoming front and centre of their early years strategy, and they're looking to really grow. And they've actually just started a partnership, which is really lovely, with North Lincolnshire Council and Nottingham City Council to produce what they call idea sheets. And it's basically an A4 sheet that supports the parent in the usage of the books. And it's got ideas and suggestions and what we would call reading tips to support the parent in getting the most out of the book with their child. And they're at the forefront of that. So they really are taking it seriously and getting involved, which is really lovely.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. So yes, well, I'll be in touch about that, because as I say, it does help to funnel everything straight to the relevant contact. Yes. Yeah. So yeah. Right. Anybody else with any questions for Helen?
Can I just say thank you very much indeed for asking me to talk to you. And, you know, and thank you all for being friends of Lambourn Library. You know, when my kids were little, I was in the library all the time, and we still use it now, but slightly less that they're older. But I'm so delighted we have a library in Lambourn. And I hope the families that get the Imagination Library books make the most of it and value, you know, what is still here, thank goodness.
Well, thank you. And thank you very much. Looking at what the Imagination Library does, I think it's the most wonderful community project, you know, and program, and how you draw in, you know, this partnership between a well-organized system that provides the books and sorts all that sort of thing out, and then, you know, your community partners who have presumably the knowledge of their communities, and of course the fundraising and things like that. You know, it is a tremendous program. And I think you must have one of the best jobs ever. So thank you very much for talking to us this evening. And yes, thank you very much. And good luck with everything in the future. Yes.
Thank you. Well, you know, if you ever get to meet in person again and you want to hear an update, please do invite me back. Yeah. I'd be delighted.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much,
everyone. Good night.
Right. Good night.